رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم علينا بالخير. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر إلى الذين خرجوا من ديارهم وهم ألوف حذر الموت فقال لهم الله موتوا ثم أحياهم إن الله لذو فضل على الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. Now, in this ayat, Allah mentions, "Have you, O Prophet?" Now, it's Allah's not mentioning any single prophet, because in this, Allah's talking about the prophet, and then He's also talking about like the companions of the prophet, you could say, like the most closest companions, and of course those that also didn't believe, and they ended up fleeing their houses due to fear. Now there's actually a specific incident that this is referring to. Apparently the, the there was there were residents of a city during the time of Bani Israel, and for them, where they lived, the weather didn't suit them, and an epidemic broke out. So they fled this land to seek shelter. And what happened was, uh, they went away from the land to seek shelter, and they went to like a valley, and they filled the entirety of it. And so what happened was, Allah sent two angels to them. Allah sent one to the lower side of it, and then the upper side of the valley. And both angels screamed at once, and the and all the people died instantly. Just like so it was like they all died at the same time. And later on, what happened was, a prophet who is unnamed was passing by from there, and then he made dua to Allah to bring them back to life. So it is stated that this when Allah said die, it was like, some scholars interpret it as Allah was punishing them. Like this was like a like they did die, and like in the literal meaning, and some also say that maybe it was for their hearts. Allah said, like they didn't believe anymore. And then usually when Allah mentions something like inna Allah lazu fadlin, like inna Allah lazu fadl, like Allah would mention that Allah, surely Allah is the most bountiful, right? Then in this, it's different, because Allah mentions inna Allah lazu fadlin ala nas, for mankind, and then on top of that, He's also saying, but most people are ungrateful. And I guess in like the next few ayahs, you sort of learn how people are ungrateful. So in ayah number,
Excuse me, just I want to explain it little more. What is this hazara? Hazara is what? Fear. So here, hazar al-maut is fear of the death. So in some tafasir, Two reasons are there. Maybe it is due to the deadly disease. It maybe it
Hmm.
was due to the fear in the jihad. Any case will be there. But
Hmm.
main thing is that we should not leave any holy cause due to the fear of death, because death
Hmm.
cannot left. Even uh, if we hide ourselves in firm castle, death will not leave us. If there is the time of death, the death time for everyone is fixed. So
Hmm.
this thing make us bold. If we do our duties and keep this fear away. Okay, how it is the fear of the deadly disease. There are some rulings regarding to even deadly diseases, that if
Hmm.
in some place there are spreading of the deadly disease, what is the ruling? You might to stay here in that place, confine yourself in that place, don't leave that. Okay,
Hmm.
but if we have a fear of the death and we just leave that place, and in this way if the disease is spreading, that it's not good. So if
Hmm.
this is the reason, then again, but after this ayah 243, we see that it is about the jihad. Waqatilu fi sabilillah. So maybe
Hmm.
the reason behind is one reason behind is fear of jihad. So before addressing the jihad, Allah told us some incident about the recent ummas, that no use of fear of the death, because the time is fixed. It will come. Nobody can avoid it. And in the next ayah, in Allah lazul fadli ala nasi walakinna akthara an-nas la yashkurun. So you had explained it. I think you all clear about the first portion.
Hmm.
So you can move.
Jazakallah. Yeah, I almost forgot to mention that
No problem.
this ruku now, it's going back to the topic of jihad, because now the battle of Badr still hasn't taken place, and Allah's still trying to prepare the Muslims and their mindset for the battle. So now in ayah number 244, وقاتلوا في سبيل الله واعلموا أن الله سميع عليم. Right? So وقاتلوا في سبيل الله, fight in the way of Allah. في سبيل الله, it's like in the way of Allah, and know that Allah is all hearing. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ, and then all knowing, alim. So it this is like pretty much reminding the Muslims that this is this should be the main reason to fight. And it's kind of, you might think it's strange that Allah is reminding, but you'll realize why Allah is doing this in the next few ayahs, when Allah gives us this incident of the Bani Israel, in which their intention wasn't exactly uh, pure. Right. So ayat number 245. من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا فيضاعفه له فيضاعفه له أضعافا كثيرة والله والله يقبض ويبسط وإليه ترجعون. Now, over here, Allah's asking, who will, who will lend Allah now qaradan hasanan, a good loan, all right, which is it's pretty much like like it's referring to like an open-ended loan, or like, this is like it's referring to, now wait, how do I explain this? So there's a terminology the Quran uses in some places known as infaq. Right now, as a Muslim, our, our jobs, our lifestyle, these are all sort of, you could say, infaqs. The main, the actual definition of infaq, you could say, would be like the spending in a certain direction, to spend in order to gain the pleasure of Allah, like to please Allah, to spend something for to please Allah. So, but Allah didn't mention infaq here. Allah mentions qard. Allah mentioned a loan, which is it almost puts, it puts the believer to shame, because it shows that mankind is greedy. We can't give without being expected to be returned. So Allah saying, okay, sure, I'll give you, just give me a loan and I'll pay you back. And then for you da'ifahu, and then he multiplies it. Many places in the Quran we'll see, things like zakat and all, we give, however many, and then Allah multiplies it tenfold, however many, like it gets multiplied so into so many more good deeds. And this is pretty much that, you'll give a loan, and Allah will give you back in like tenfold of of which you gave. And this qard, right, qardan hasanan, it can refer to anything. It can refer to your property, it can refer to your wealth, it can, this can apply for anything. But in this specific ayat, in this specific incident, not incident, like in the actual, like, what Allah is actually referring to the believers is their life, their soul. Because again, you have to remember, they're going for jihad, going to fight, the Quraysh, and so they must be willing to be able to give, qardan hasanan, to be able to give a good loan. In what form? In the form of the life and the soul.
Yeah, Karde Asna is little bit different. I want to explain it little more. Uh, the most Rajer, I mean, most consensus for that about it is the money which is specially spending in the progress of the deen or religion, or in spreading the deen. Okay, it is beautiful. Hasna means beautiful. It is beautiful. Kard. So there are some shurut. The intention should be pure. Okay, the money should be halal. Okay, and money should also pure means, and you should give it with happiness, with willingness, in other words, and you should spend it in the right place. And after giving or spending, you forget any reward, you will inshallah get this reward in hereafter. Okay, so again, yeah, and one another opinion is also there. Okay, any type, any it is maybe in the jihad. You know what is the meaning of jihad? Jihad is not confined only in fighting. Fighting or qital, it is one aspect of the jihad, but jihad is the struggle. Okay, the linguistic meaning of jihad is struggling, but in Islamic terminology, it is one kind. Qital is it's one kind, but if we are struggling for the religion in any ways, you are spending for the betterment of the religion, or you are spending in teaching of Islam anywhere, it is jihad. If even today you beg for Allah, for sake of Allah, and try to study this book. This is also a one example of jihad. But
Hmm.
when the peak of this jihad, when needed, not always, when needed, that is qatal. Okay, so in any case, in the path of Allah, in the spreading deen, what you spend, that is kardan hasana, and Allah
Hmm.
is giving us glad tiding about that. If you spend likewise only the spreading and for the process or prosperity of the religion, the deen, so Allah will, what Allah will give you, fayudaifahu, it will increase. Lahu means for those who give the karde hasna ad'afan kathira, many times. Okay,
Hmm.
and in the next part, wallahu yaqbidu wa yabsutu, it means people sometimes, why they not spend their money, because they have fear that maybe there might be their money can be less. So Allah is trying to address this problem, this issue, that
Hmm.
Allah will increase your risk. Okay, so don't worry about your money. It will be not what we can decrease. And last thing, wa ilayhi turja'un, don't forget, you have to come to me. Okay, there I will give you the reward of the deeds. Doesn't mean they are good or bad. So it is clear, karde hasna, one opinion is that it is purely for the but not, it is one opinion, overall it is same thing, that we spend our money for the progress and spreading the deen. Okay,
Hmm.
in any form, if in teaching, as a teaching aid, or in the welfare purposes, or in for the new Muslims, or for helping the every believer, any case. Okay,
Hmm.
but main thing is that we expect for it the reward from Allah. Okay, maybe we get some in this dunya in the shape of peace, in any other way, but if we feel we did not get anything back, but we should know that karze asna, mainly the reward of karze asna is in the hereafter. Okay,
Hmm.
jazakallah khair, you can
Jazakallah. Yeah, and one more thing I want to add over
yeah.
here. Allah mentions in the end, "Wa ilayhi turja'un." Like he's saying, you know, you can give a goodly loan, but like in the end, in the end, you're still going to return to Him. It's a now the next few hours they get pretty lengthy. Now Allah tells about the incident. So in ayat number 246, uh, Allah mentions alam tara, right? Did you not see? Right now, you can interpret this like uh, Allah's like when you come, let's say like if you come for class, and then teacher or any other student mentions to you, did you not know this? And then like list something that you didn't know. You sort of like you pay more attention, and then you realize that there's so much you do not know, and so you try to like catch up. Like Allah is actually saying this to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the reason why Allah is saying this is because uh, you know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's supposed to be the teacher for the whole of mankind, but then he's also like the first student of the Quran, and so Allah is like trying to engage him, and he's trying to like what's a student if he doesn't have the eagerness to study? Like if like look at us. If we sometimes if we don't feel like studying, like what's the output? We don't get any output. And so Allah's pretty much saying, did you not see? It's also pretty much showing how important this is. It's like one of those fundamental things, and we didn't know. And so Allah mentions, Alam Tara, did you not know? And then immediately tells the entire incident. So ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي لنبي لهم ابعث لنا ملكا نقاتل في سبيل الله قال هل عسيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ألا تقاتلوا قالوا وما لنا ألا نقاتل في سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا
أخرجنا.
وأبنائنا.
وقد أخرجنا.
Okay. Thank you. سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا وأبنائنا فلما كتب عليهم القتال تولوا إلا قليلا منهم والله عليم بالظالمين. So after mentioning that, Alam Tara, Allah then talks about, have you not seen those chiefs, Mala chiefs of the children of Israel, Min Bani Israel, Min Ba'di Musa. So when is the story taking place? After Musa alayhi salam. Now, uh, interesting enough, Min Ba'di Musa, like Min Ba'd, like it's like one of those things in the Arabic language which can mean two different things, and they're both complete opposites of each other. So this could mean like soon after Musa alayhi salam. So like, the concept and the legacy of Musa alayhi salam, and all his teachings were still fresh in the minds of the Bani Israel, or it could mean a long time after Musa alayhi salam. Now we do not know. You can interpret it, however you want. And also, I want to mention another thing, another really specific word choice, which also shows the beauty of the Quran, and it's the way it's worded. Over here, Allah mentions chief. He uses the word mala, right? It's there are other words for chiefs. Allah uses mala, and interestingly enough, mala also means to fill. So like, the reason why they're called mala is because they fill the higher authority, you could say, or like the ministry, and they fill, like those very those like very VIP sort of meetings or whatever, or like sectors, like they fill up the slots of that. That's why they're called mala. But also, now this is where the very specific wording comes into play. Allah names someone else mala too. Allah names the people in the court of Fir'aun as mala. And so just through this one word, Allah's showing like even like just after Musa alayhi salam, these like the mala, they've like sort of like made a turn. Like they're now the corruption of what was in the people in the court of Fir'aun. It's now made its way back. Now, they're also now corrupt. They're once again corrupt. And it also shows that even after the like one of the greatest teachers of all time, and what did he save them from? Pharaoh. He saved them from Pharaoh, and then they literally, the irony is they went back to the practice of the Pharaoh and the Mala. And so these mala, they, this incident again took place after, min ba'di Musa, after the passing of Musa alayhi salam. Is qalu linabiyyin lahum mub'ath. Right, so these mala, they went to a prophet. Now which prophet, we do not know. It's unnamed, which is, you could say, it's kind of unusual for the Quran and for Allah to do, because usually wherever there'd be a chance, they'd name a prophet. But here's the beauty of the guidance, and the way the Quran gives guidance. It's, if you were to compare the stories of the Quran, because Quran is not a history book. Quran teaches guidance through history, but it's not a history book. It doesn't, you know, you know, Allah will only tell you the important details that you need to know in order to learn a lesson. If we were to compare the Quran to like something like the Bible, the Bible has much more like detailed descriptions, and they'll have, every incident has like many major names and places involved, and it's like there's so much detail. But then what you realize is that it's all like a story to them. Like the priests and everything, they'll just be telling the story, but then there's nothing to learn. But then the beauty of the Quran is, you know the in comparison to the Bible, the description given in the Quran isn't, it's nothing. It's very minuscule. But then you see how, even in these classes, you can see how much you're able to dig up from even just one verse. How the ulama, they're all able to like, it's such a short, like, you can look at a verse, it's like really short, and then you'll see how much they're able to interpret from it. So this is, one of the beauties of, like, one of the things of how, like, the Quran gives guidance, and how Allah chooses to give guidance. He'll only tell you the important things. And there's a saying that goes that, uh, the best, way of teaching is that which is like concise, short and concise, but gets the point through. And that's exactly how uh, Allah teaches through the Quran. He doesn't tell every name, you know. And again, there's already been a sense of urgency that's been built with, alam tara, by saying, did you not know this? Oh, okay, well, I'm going to tell you this now. And it's like, it just shows how important this is. And by also not telling the name of the prophet, it also shows how important this incident is. Like, Allah wants to tell this incident, and the name of the prophet isn't even important in this. Like, you don't even need to know that. That's just extra information. What you need to know is this incident. So now, let's go through this incident. These mala, they go to the prophet. It was any one of the prophet. Now, the specific wording here doesn't say the prophet. It says a prophet. They said to a prophet, which again is another indication that many prophets came to the Bani Israel. Like, they came, between, each of the major, or the most big name prophets, you could say, like Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam. Even between those, many prophets came. Even in the same surah previously, we learned that they even killed some of them. So they went to this prophet, and Allah says to this prophet of theirs, and Ab'ath, they asked him to appoint a king, so that they may fight, fi sabilillah, so that they may fight in the way of Allah. A lot of, you could say, contradictions in there. So they go, and they didn't need to ask a prophet for a king. These are the mala, these are the chiefs. They like and you'll learn this later on in the next ayah too. And like, their entire intention wasn't exactly, for fighting. It wasn't to fight, for fi sabilillah, for the way of Allah. And the only reason they went to this prophet to, choose a king from amongst them was so that, there'll be justification, there'll be a religious justification for their power on top of the political one. And when they say lahum ba'ath lana malikan, they're they're saying to appoint a king, but they're also secretly, you know anticipating that this king will be from amongst them, from these mala, from the chiefs. They wanted it from, they were expecting it to be amongst, from, to be one of them. We'll see how that turns out later on in the next few ayahs. But that was pretty much their entire intention, right? So they go to a prophet and they say, give us a king so that we might fight in the way of Allah. Which, by the way, you don't need a king to fight in the way of Allah. uh, this prophet was wise enough to notice you know uh, their falseness. And he said, qala, he said, hal asaytum in kutiba alaykum al-kitab, right? Would you, like, he was asking, like, sort of, you could say, surprising, like, would you fight in the way of, like, kutiba alaykum al-kitab, uh, and Allah tuqatilu qalu wa ma lana alla nuqatil, he's saying, like, will you actually fight without, getting some backlash, without feeling, so scared, because uh, like, will you not, like, run? Would you not, like, feel coward? I say to him here, it's like, most probably, you could say, like, it's the English equivalent to Arsaitam would be like, when you tell someone, okay, this is like 99.9% sure, like, you're 99.9% sure. It's not certain, it's not 100%, but it's you're very sure that something's going to happen. And so this prophet says, are you, like, Arsaitam, are you not, like, sure that, if you were to be ordered to fight, you will not cower, you will not show cowardness? And that's exactly what happens. uh, Later on, we'll see that. But what happens is, he tells them, and they know the truth, they know that this is the truth. But the prophet mentions this to them, and then on top of that, they actually feel, they feel insulted, like, offended. قالوا وما لنا ألا نقاتل في سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا وأبنائنا. Like, why wouldn't we fight, fi sabilillah, for the way of Allah, when we have been kicked out of our land, and, are separate, and been separated from our children? Now, in this, they also mentioned, like, you could call it like a fraudulent slip. Maybe this is like, it was, it might not have been intentional by them, but during the sentence, they literally just said what their actual, like, motive was. Their motive wasn't fi sabilillah. They said, why wouldn't we fight in the way of Allah when we have been driven out of our homes, and, our children have been enslaved? The, and that's actually what happened to them. These people, they were driven out of their homes, and many of them, especially the children, they were taken slaves to Babylonia. So, like, why wouldn't we want the land back? Now, tell me this motive to fight, right? uh akhrajna min diyarina wa abnaina. you know uh, when you've been driven out of your home, when you've been separated from your children, this is a legit, like, this is a legitimate reason to fight. This is not like an excuse, you could say. They have a legitimate excuse to fight. But what they did wrong was they mixed it with fi sabilillah. Fi sabilillah refers to, like, to spread Islam, to be able to ensure that Allah's laws are, implemented somewhere, or to spread the beauty of Islam, like how beautiful Islam is. Like, that is fi sabilillah. Going back and, trying to get your land back because you were driven out of it, and, your children were slaves, that's not fi sabilillah. They're masking it in fi sabilillah. Like, you see what I mean? They're mixing it. They're trying to be pretentious. And so, Allah then gives them, this is exactly what happens, what the Prophet said would happen. Allah then gives them the order to fight. And then فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالِ, they were given the order to fight. تَوَلَّوْا, they all turned away. They all ran away. They all, became cowards. They all bailed. And then Allah mentions Wallahu alimun bizzalimin, and Allah is all knowing of the wrongdoers. Now, like, there's also like a really interesting word choice here. Allah could have like put this sort of in past tense, but then Allah doesn't, because you have to remember. Okay, I want to show you. Some of you might have even noticed this connection, but these people, what did they say? They wanted to fight because, well, I mean, they say fi sabilillah, but that's not their actual, excuse for, that's not why they're actually fighting. They're fighting because they were driven out of their homes, and what was theirs was taken from them. Who else had this happen to them? The Muhajirin. The Quraysh, drove the Muhajirin out of Makkah, and then they all migrated to Medina. And so Allah is showing in this to not have that mentality. And so when Allah mentions Allah is all knowing about the wrongdoers, Allah is mentioning of those that have that had the intention of going back and to fight, to fight the Quraysh with the intention of gaining Makkah back. No, you're not fighting to get Makkah back. You're not fighting because your property was there. You're fighting because fi sabilillah. You're fighting because of Allah. So Allah's saying, like, Allah's also showing the the Muhajirin of the Muhajirin and the Muslims that do not do this. It is this is a legitimate excuse, but do not confuse it with fi sabilillah. And it's surely it's not superior to fi sabilillah. Now in the next ayah, وقال لهم نبيهم إن الله قد بعث لكم طالوت ملكا قالوا أنى يكون له الملك علينا ونحن أحق بالملك منه ولم يؤت سعة من المال قال إن الله أصطفناه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم.
Sorry for interrupting. For the previous ayah, I want to add something. I think it's necessary. You explain it beautifully. Why sometimes there are not specific names mentioned in the Quran. Very beautifully you explain this point. But see, next thing, but I want to know, just discuss with you that we believe that upon all the holy books. But what's the problem now? The people of that religion, they make changes nowadays. Means tahrif, the specific word for the changes. So we can take only those things from that books which matches with the Quran. Okay, because Quran is the Furqan which can separate the truth and the fake thing. So if something is contradicted with the Quran, we will not take. But if something is according to Quran, no problem, we can take.
Mm-hmm.
So it is clear now. Okay, we respect these holy books.
Mm-hmm.
Our iman cannot be complete without believing it. So just I want
Mm-hmm.
to add this thing. Otherwise, you have beautifully explained everything, and I like this point that why the names are not mentioned, because this is not the book of history. This is a book of guidance. Main purpose is that to give the lesson very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can proceed.
Jazakallah. Now, now, this is the incident of when the king is appointed, right? They went and they asked for the king. And by the way, I want to point something else at the previous ayah. It's not something super major, but they what purpose did they go to for? Uh, this mala, they went to this prophet for what purpose? They went to so that he can appoint a king. But then like he turns the direction uh towards towards the fighting, towards the towards towards fighting in the way of Allah. So now in this ayah, the kingship is mentioned, like at the appointing of the king. So over here, Allah mentions وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ. Right now, Allah didn't even need to mention وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ. It could have just been وَقَالَ لَهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ. Like, it was very obvious that it was, that Allah would be referring to the Nabi, to the Prophet. But then Allah wanted to specify that this was their Prophet, because a connection was sort of established when these people came to the Prophet for, to seek his to seek his help and his choice. So now the Prophet tells them, first thing he tells them, inna Allah, inna Allah qad ba'atha lakum taluta malikan. Inna Allah. So he's off the bat, he's saying this was Allah's decision. And then qad ba'atha. Now the combination of these two words, qad and ba'atha, like Arabic students here might know, but like the only way I can explain it, it's like it's like it's pretty much establishing really like major, what's the word, like emphasis, really major emphasis, that guys, listen, this is from Allah. Allah chose this is, and the reason why so much emphasis is being put here is because they know that they're going to show backlash at what, lakum taluta malikan, that Talut was picked as king for them. Now again, uh I guess you could say the logical, or like the actual way you would structure this would be inna allaha qad ba'atha taluta malikan lakum. But then this prophet mentioned instead lakum taluta malikan, like he's telling that Allah has appointed for you Talut as king. Like this is done for your benefit. Allah's like this prophet, he's not even talking to the people of Bani Israel. He's talking to the chiefs, the mala. And so he's pretty much also like telling that he's not going to be, a good king. He's not only going to be, a good king for the people, but he's also going to be a good king for the mala, for these mala, for the chiefs. And it's pretty much to their benefit. And the main reason why it's to their benefit is because if any one of them were to be appointed, which is pretty much what they wanted one of them to be appointed, and if that was to happen, they would pretty much cut each other's throat. They'll be eating each other alive. Like, they all of them would have wanted the power, which is why Allah has mentioned that this is done for you, for your benefit. This is benefiting you. And then the prophet didn't even leave any stone unturned. He specifically mentioned this was chosen, Talut was chosen as king, right? He could have just said, Inna Allah qad ba'atha lakum Talut, like, and then they would have joked around with it. They would have been like, yeah, he's been chosen as leader, and you know he leads the prayer, and he gives a khutbah. No, he's been picked as leader above you. And a little backstory to this, the wahi pretty much came, and Talut was like one of the poorest people there in from among the population. And these so when this prophet was bringing it to them, these people, these mullah, these chiefs, you know they were you know they were so eager to know who Allah had chosen to be king. Each and every one of them wrote like a not a letter, like a speech of acceptance, like like a when a king will be decided, they'll read this like speech of loyalty, and like how they'll show their loyalty to this king. But then what's their reaction instead? Okay, we're about to find out. Qalu anna yakunu lahul mulk. Immediate reaction: how can it be that he's given kingship? And again, now Arabic students, this is actually kind of simple Arabic. How in Arabic is kaifa. You say kaifa halukum, kaifal hal. But anna is used over here for how. Anna is like when you're using how shockingly, like it's like the shocking version of kaifa. It's like you know it's like I guess the English interpretation with this would be like how in the world. So like they're pretty much saying, Anna yakunu lahul mulk. Like how in the world is he going to be, how is he given leadership? And I wanna mention two other things too. Just go back to what the Prophet said. Okay, so first off, the Prophet, what did he mention? Inna Allah, this is from Allah. So like off the get-go, they know that okay, this is like, this has been appointed by Allah. And then you see this reaction. Whose will are they going against? It wasn't the will of the Prophet. They're going against the will of Allah. They're going against like the commandment of Allah. And on top of that, just the fact that the Prophet mentioned in Allah, like it's no prophet needs to remind or express that a certain thing has been like that, whatever they say and whatever they do is from Allah. Like we hear the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does he mention that? I mean, to the believers, he doesn't mention that. In Allah, who does he mention? Who do prophets mention that this X, Y, or Z is from Allah? To the non-believers, to the people that don't believe in Him. So in this, subtly, he's also like revealing that these people don't, they have really surface level iman, and they might not even have iman, because their main purpose, again, it wasn't even fi sabilillah. They were just masking it, and they really just wanted approval, religious approval. And so going back, right, they say inna yakun in no they say anna yakunu lahul mulk. How has he been given kingship? Alayna wa nahnu ahaqqu bil mulk. Now, like, they're revealing their true colors, sort of, right? Alayna wa nahnu ahaqqu bil mulk. How has he been given kingship when while we are more entitled to it. Now this pretty much they're sort of revealing the fact that they wanted someone from themselves to be king, but now they're not even hiding it anymore. That now they're just openly stating it. They're making it very obvious. They're like, you know, one of us deserves it more. But then it's not so much the fact that they wanted one of them to be the leader, or one of them to be the king, that's like that's shocking. It's their excuse for why they think they deserve, or one of them deserves, to be the king. And that is, wala that is minhu walahum yu'ta sa'atam min al-mal. Now, very specific word choice here. They're trying to remain passive. They're saying yu'ta sa'atam min al-mal, like he has not been given great abundance of wealth, or yeah, of wealth. They could have just straight up said, he's poor, he doesn't have money. But then they said he has not been given. They're still trying to remain passive. They're still trying to remain pretentious, but again, they're doing a really bad job at it. So, and going, if you look at today's society, who's chosen as like the president or the king? They don't look at who's worthy of being a leader, who's worth of being a leader. Whether they're like, they look at the most rich. If you look at the US, like, if a presidential, you know if someone was running in the election and he wasn't able to fund enough money, no one, like, no one even gives him attention, no one really cares about him. They're like, okay, this guy's already lost, this guy doesn't have any money. So unfortunately, this is also, their their way of thinking is extremely wrong. But unfortunately, that's also the world we live in right now, in which it's filled with people and governments that pretty much think of the same way. That the only people who are worthy of getting leadership and kingship are those that are who have an abundance of wealth. Now, the Prophet replies, qala inna allaha astafnahu alaykum was wazadahu, right? So he's once again mentioning that this is from Allah, and he mentions astafnahu, like this very specific word choice, again, very specific, extremely specific. Astafnahu, like, uh I forgot what the root word is, but it pretty much means to like choose something because of its purity. It's like he's telling Allah has appointed Talut because of his purity. He's more pure than any of you. And also astafnahu, like, I guess another to like further uh emphasize on the meaning of astafnahu, like an example of it, of like regular, like our astafna, like, would be, like if you go to a candy store and there's like different types of candy, but you chose a specific one. Like, no one can like kind of ask you why you did so, because it's a personal preference. Your favorite color, that's like a personal preference. No one like can question you on that. And so that's pretty much this in the same vein of astafnahu, like Allah chose him because Allah wanted to. And by mentioning astafnahu, it's also like sort of emphasizing that, see, Allah has appointed Talut, and you cannot question it. There's no questioning it. You have no right to question it. No further questions. And then on top of that, right, astafnahu, Allah has chosen him, for his purity. alaykum wazadahu, and increased him over you. He's given something, there was already, he already had this feature that was already, you know uh, he had a trait that was, that wasn't really present in many people, this unusual trait that a lot of people don't have, and which was, it's obviously talking about good, like a good trait that most people didn't have. And alaykum wazadahu, and increased it. And this is obviously right now, you know if we read the following words, bastatan fil ilmi wal just, like, what did Allah, increase of his above them, it's this ilmi wal jism, like it's his knowledge and his physique. Bastatan refers to something that's like, like if there was like a landscape, and like you could look at, like it's like really wide, like you can't even look at the corners of it standing from the middle of it, like it's like super like broad. That's exactly what bastatan is like. He's referring to, like, Allah's given him a very broad, you know knowledge, and he's been giving very, broad, like, and like literally broad physique. Talut actually literally means, I forgot the root word for it, but Talut pretty much means extremely tall. Like he was like, he stood out wherever he was. He was always the tallest in a crowd. He was so much taller than everyone else. He like stood out. And so, Allah has given him like a very extreme physique, and a really abundant physique, and an abundant knowledge, you know. And then wallahu yu'ti mulkahu, and then Allah mentions that, he gives kingship to whoever he wants, and man yasha wallahu wasi'un alim, right? So and when Allah mentions wallahu yu'ti mulkahu man yasha, or specifically when the prophet mentions this, he's also adding on top of, we already got astafnahu, that Allah chose this, chose Talut, even though none of you might know him, and you might consider him poor. Which, by the way, when one of them, the chiefs, just saying that he cannot be leader just because he's poor, what are they doing? They're pretty much like, they're showing that they look at poor people as like a low, like a with a low standard. They don't think highly of poor people. And so if any of them had become kings, how would they have served their own people if they don't even think of them right? They're all thinking of them. All these chiefs, if any of them was to become king, they would have just looked at the people, and they would have just think, well, you're all poor, none of you matter. And so, but Allah mentions here, wallahu yu'ti mulkahu man yasha. It's also referring that, when the prophet also said this, he was also referring to, like, even if you don't accept him as a king, one way or another, he's going to become king, because Allah chose him. Allah wants him to get kingship. One way or another, you cannot avoid this. He's going to become king now. And then Allah ends the verse, but wallahu wasi'un alim. Allah is the most knowledgeable.
Just a minute. Noise, Alhamdulillah, you explained it very well, and I can't stop myself to appreciate you, because you are referring the grammar rules and the root words very nicely. Very good. Inna and kad, both words are for focusing more. Alhamdulillah. And you discuss about the root words very nicely. I want to add something. Just have a look on this portion of the ayah. وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. What is this? Allah, if we compare the wording of the Sahaba and the wording of these people, which are the companions of Musa or the children of the Israel. What is the difference between them? Allah passed the Sahaba from many trials, very tough. For example, the change of Qibla, it is very tough time. It is very, you can say that it was trial or azmaish for them. During the prayer, Allah had ordered them to change the Qibla. Like that, there is the incident of unusual incident of Miraj, all of this Israel Miraj. But they, believer, Alhamdulillah, they always surrender themselves. So like that, many more. And one is the, documentation of Hudaybiyah. That was also a very tough time. But always they say, what they say, we study in the last part of this. You will study, inshallah, at the last part of the Surah Baqarah, the last ayat. Always, what is the answer of them? وَقَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. What is the meaning? We have listened and we will obey. This is the word. These are the wordings of the Sahaba. Alhamdulillah. But what are the wordings after in Allah qad? Sorry, in Allah qad. What is that? After the order of Allah, what they are saying? We are deserving. Means we are deserving. Why? On the basis of mal, on the basis of wealth and status. So what type of lesson we can get from it here? Importance of ilm is more than than the wealth and status. But now we can compare our situation where we are standing right now, closer to the Sahaba or closer to these people. So we have to change our lives, our minds. You are the future of the nation. So that's why I am discussing that thing. So we are going closer to those people. But what is the good thing? We have to come back to the life of Sahaba. Okay, you can proceed.
Jazakallah. Okay. Now the last verse of the ruku. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ آيَةَ ملكه أن يأتيكم التابوت فيه سكينة من ربكم وبقية مما ترك آل موسى وآل هارون تحمله الملائكة إن في ذلك لآية لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. All right, now again, وَقَالَ لَهُمْ, like how the previous ayah started, pretty much this is the Prophet saying to them that وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ inna, like, so pretty much the Prophet talking to them now, that a sign, all right, ayata, a sign of the mulki, of the kingship of who? Kingship of Talut. One of the signs of the kingship of Talut will be that أن يأتيكم. So I'm this what it's mentioning here in أن يأتيكم التابوت is the tabut. It's there was a chest that the Bani Israel had, right? So in this chest they had very prized things, you could say, like very what's the word, like it's really important things, really important religious things that had really important religious significance, like those kind of items were in that chest, that tabut. Like now, and some examples of what was in there was like the staff of Musa alayhi salam, right? You know how the Bani Israel, they were given manna and salwa. Well, the seeds of manna, they were in like a little bag, and that was stored, that was in that chest. And other things were also in it, like I think there's uh, sort of like a rumor, you could say, that in that chest there's also like I believe the ring of one of the prophets, I think Sulaiman alayhi salam, if I'm not mistaken. And this chest, in modern day, we don't know where it is, right? Some believe that the this is actually hidden within the Masjid al-Aqsa, and that's why some Jews actually want that, like they're wanting, like if they get the chance to like tear down the masjid and like the surrounding area just to find this chest. Now, that is, so just like excuse that, these people had given a lot of, not just religious, there's a lot of emotional attachment to this tabut, right? This chest. Like whenever they'd be going for an expedition or whenever they'd be going anywhere, like the first animal that would be leading all the other ones, the first caravan, the animal that's pulling the first caravan, you know like from the you know from the front, right? That animal, they'll put the chest on him, like just like because of importance. And they would also put it in, it was also the qibla, that it almost acted like a qibla for them, like they would put it in front of them when they were praying, like whenever any religious matter, whenever anyone was being punished or whatever, like they would bring the chest, to that occasion, so like a lot of emotional and religious attachment was to it. And when they mentioned, the Mala mentioned in the previous ayahs, that they were driven out of the homes. And so that's pretty much how, that wasn't the first time. They've been driven out of the homes multiple times. And it was during one of those times in which they were driven out of the homes, in which the tabut was taken from them. And so the way the tabut came back, right? Now, by the way, over here it's mentioned "Ain ya'tiyakum," right? S what it's referring, it's obviously saying that the tabut will come back to them, but it's also referring that the tabut will come back to them not with hardship. It's like it's going to come back to them so easily, like it'll be like literally strolling up to them, like it'll literally make its way back. And so how that happened was, the people that had taken, over their land of the Bani Israel, and the tabut was in their possession. What happened was, Allah made it so that wherever the tabut was kept, this chest was kept, some sort of, like something happened there, like a disease spread, an earthquake happened, a thunderstorm happened, like a flood took place, like something like this happened. And they constantly changed the position of this tabut. But then every time they changed it, that place where they kept it the second time, like the next time, some sort of something happened there, like again, like a plague or whatever. Like, and so these people, what did they start to believe? Obviously they start to believe that this was bad luck, that this was a curse. So they took a tabut, the tabut, and they placed it on like the on a caravan without any animal, and they just pushed it. Now what would happen is, if there was a caravan that was being led by a rider or by an animal, I mean, obviously the animal has a rider on top. So most of the time it'll just get robbed, right? But then this, Allah mentions here, uh, okay, first Allah mentions fihi sakinatun, there's tranquility in it. Sakinatum mir rabbikum وبقية مما ترك آل موسى وآل هارون تحمله الملائكة تحمله تحمله الملائكة. Like this would be like the caravan. Well, they didn't know it was a caravan, but like it was pretty much like the prophet was telling them that the angels, and Allah's mentioning here too, like the angels pretty much took care of that caravan, which is why like it didn't get robbed or like nothing happened to it. It was able to make its way securely from that place to to the Bani Israel. Now over here Allah mentions fihi sakinatan. In it you'll get tranquility from the now obviously when Allah mentions this, they had a lot of emotional and religious attachment to this tabut, and so when it was lost, obviously they were all extremely saddened. But then so Allah's mentioning that when you get it back and when you see it, you'll get tranquility. But also, what are they preparing for right now? They're preparing for war. They're preparing for battle. And what interestingly enough, another place where Allah mentions tranquility was like in some of the other battles of the Muslims, like in the Battle of Badr. um, what happened was Allah gave them sakinatun, tranquility, during before the fight. How? Allah made sure that everyone had like a really peaceful sleep, and it was like they all woke up and they were like, well, this is the best power nap ever. Like they all like they all had like they woke up and they all had the energy to fight. Like so that kind of tranquility, like it gave them peace. And so from the so inside, Allah mentions that there was the mimma taraka ala Musa wa ala Harun. So like so, the translation here says okay, now over here it remains that a remnant left behind by the family, which is exactly what it is. In some other translations you'd see that it's just saying uh, what's in it is like the family of Musa or the family of Harun. That's not the case. It's like what was like essential physical items that were like used to like remember the family of Musa or Musa alayhi salam himself, and the family of Harun. Like those things were placed in it. And again, tahmiluhul malaika, it was carried by the angels. They took care of it. Nothing happened to the caravan. Inna fi zalika la ayatal lakum in kuntum mu'minin. So it's in it is surely a sign for those who are believers. Now the the mala, the chiefs, they didn't ask for a sign because because their faith was already low. Now, when is a sign asked? When like not, to be specific, when is a miracle asked? Because this is a miracle. When is a miracle asked? When they want to like prove, when they want the prophet to prove that he's actually a prophet so that they may believe in him. Now, the one point is that they already believed in him. They already believed he was a prophet. But on top of that, the chiefs of these chiefs, these mullah, they knew that if a miracle was to happen and it was to be, it was to show the kingship of Talut, it wouldn't just be the chiefs who would see it. This would be something that the entire population would see. And so if you were to deny that you didn't see it, people would just straight up, say that you're disbelieving in the sign. Did you not see the sign? How do you not see the sign? The tabut came back. So like they didn't want this to happen because then it would also like, sort of justify Talut as the king, but that's exactly what happened. And so in Allah mentions here then inna fi zalika la ayatan lakum in kuntum mu'minin, and it is a sign truly for the believers. And Allah mentions this somewhere elsewhere, can't remember where. It was for I believe it was a miracle that the Prophet sallallahu, I'm not sure, but it's like it was even said even for the Sahaba, like the almost the exact same wording was used. So it's like, and the in over here, la ayatal lakum in kuntum mu'minin, in kuntum, in over here, it's like it means if, and it's a very strong if. It's a very stern if. It's like it's pretty much also signifying that none of them have faith, and none of them believed. It was like, if you would have had faith, that this is pretty much what in over here is referring to. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله أنت وأشهد أن لا إله أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاك الله.